So we were talking about this on stream earlier. I figured I'd just drop in and talk about it on Zealandism as well. We're going in the inverse of the process that we kind of normally go in, but I'll sit on stream usually and kind of at the start I'll just go, hey, you know, what happened over the past weekend or whatever that you'd want to talk about. The first thing somebody said was, did you see like Alexi McAllister's response to the Enzo Fernandez situation? Turned out he wasn't the only one that responded to it, right? It was also Rodrigo de Paul that responded to the situation, which is not surprising. These guys have to do press and stuff all of the time, and of course they're going to be asked about it because a lot of Enzo Fernandez's teammates have been making public statements or tweets or whatever about the whole situation. If you're not familiar with it, I made another video about it. Honestly, you can just go watch that one. Enzo Fernandez decided to Instagram live himself chanting a chant a lot of his teammates believed to be racist. And I'll be honest, after reading the translated version of it, it's definitely not the sort of thing that you should be Instagram living yourself chanting or just necessarily want to be chanting in the first place, right? Just not a very good thing to be saying out loud. But you can go check that out in the other video. McAllister was the first one that I was directed to, and I think it's the more reasonable of the two responses, so we will start there. He says that Enzo has already apologized and he explained what happened. There's nothing more to add. We know Enzo. We know he would never do it with bad intention. It's more of a chant that's stuck, and it's more in a mocking tone than anything else. So when I made the first video, obviously I get feedback from you guys, and there were people, I'm assuming people from Argentina, right, that did kind of inform me that at least the point of the chant, you know, that the angle isn't necessarily making fun of the guys in the French team for being of African origin, but it is the idea that they're making fun of France somehow for having to import players of African origin in order to succeed, and the idea that these guys are not French, even though there are two guys on the French national team that weren't born in France, and one of them was born in Italy. I think that was Thuram, right? Like basically the entire team was born in France. But so McAllister here is echoing something that I actually heard a lot, and something that I feel like people that were from Argentina or maybe somewhere else in South America were kind of frustrated that nobody necessarily talked about. But to be perfectly honest, I think that if that is the angle that you're taking, right? If that is the angle that you're taking on this whole chance situation, then you're just kind of shifting like the lunacy, right? You're going from we're now what I initially thought the point of the chant was, which is we're making fun of, you know, the fact, like we're basically just like we're using the fact that the players in the French team are of African origin, right? That they have African heritage. We're using that as like a derogatory thing. We're using that to kind of poke, you know, to talk shit towards them. Instead, you shift that to, wow, you know, France has to use all of these not French people in order to win. When in fact, like if we're defining, right, like whether you are French or not as whether you are born and raised in France, these dudes are basically all born and raised in France, right? So you're basically just shifting from one bad thing to another bad thing. But I just wanted to make it clear that I at least understood the different angle that a lot of people seem to be thinking this chant is coming from. Like, because that's what McAllister says. He says in a mocking tone, right? He's talking about the fact that this chant is supposed to be somehow mocking the French people about how they're using non-French people to win. I mean, it's the French national team, right? Nobody's singing like. You know what? People go, well, why is this racist, right? Well, nobody's singing about the Moroccan national team and the fact that 16 of the 26 players in the Moroccan national team weren't even born in Morocco. And I don't give a shit. They're all Moroccan. They did a hell of a job, right? And use your diaspora if you've got a diaspora, right? But the only reason people are like the only reason these types of songs exist, the only reason that they're going after the French national team is because all these dudes are black. Like let's call a spade here. That's why they're fucking chanting all this stuff, right? They're not chanting about Theo Hernandez on the French national team, right? That's not right. That's not who they're chanting about. But I'll also say, like, I can understand more where McAllister is coming from compared to DePaul, who we're going to talk about later. Because he does say, we know Enzo, we know he would never do it with bad intention. Look, I don't think you're going to find Enzo Fernandez giving the keynote speech at the next KKK rally, right? Like he does not strike me based off of having watched this dude for a while as somebody that is just like flamboyantly racist, like just over the top, absolutely absurdly frothing at the mouth racist, right? Like he doesn't strike me as that. What this struck me more as is in the culture that he's kind of been raised in and surrounded by, his other friends on the Argentine national team, this is something that they considered acceptable. And maybe they just aren't necessarily aware of the fact that it could come off really horribly. And the example that I used when I talked about this on stream is, I'm not even that old. I'm 28, okay? And when I was growing up and when I was a little kid, I said a lot of words that I don't say now. The way that society has changed over the last 20 years or whatever, I said words that I just don't say now because over the course of my life, in saying those words, I came across people that were like, yo, like that's probably just not a cool thing to do because, this reason or that reason. And then as a human being, you can look at that and be like, I want to have a positive effect on the world. I don't want to. I don't want to, be like somebody that is just going around pissing a bunch of people off all the time, making a bunch of people feel uncomfortable. So I'm just going to kind of change the way that I act, right? And so do I think Enzo Fernandez is a terrible person? No, I don't think Enzo Fernandez is a terrible person, right? But I do think that he did not understand the impact of what he was doing until he did it. And then he had a bunch of teammates and people that maybe he even considered his friends came out and were like, bruh, like you can't do that. And then he came out with an apology. Now, the problem for Enzo in this situation, right, is that he was going to apologize no matter what, whether he believes it or not. You got a PR team, you got a club behind you. That apology was going to come out either against his will or whether he actually truly just, faced up to it and was like, oh, yeah, my bad. Totally didn't know. Won't do it again. For real, no problem. Like, whatever. Just handled it the way that, you probably should be able to handle it in that situation. But the only thing that Enzo's going to be able to do is over a period of time, just not do anything else like stupid to continue to fan the flames of this. The only cure for this for Enzo is time because that apology was going to come out regardless of how Enzo Fernandez actually feels about the backlash he got for this whole situation. McAllister said the most important thing is that Enzo apologized, and we have to give value to that. Like, I just don't think that's the most important thing. It's not. He was actually going to be forced to apologize for this, no matter how he feels, right? And the apology was in Comic Sans, so I can't even take it seriously. But again, I think McAllister is coming from he's coming from the same, culture and background and understanding of everything in the way that Enzo Fernandez is. And I don't think like somebody pointed me to his statement first. I don't think that his response to this whole thing is crazy. I think it kind of just highlights that there is, at least in part, a misunderstanding at the heart of this. I don't necessarily think everybody on the Argentine team has a horrible heart and is like incredibly mean-spirited and meant to offend people in the way that they offended people. Some of them, I don't know, dude. I've never met any of them before, right? Like I'm not going to go too far in the other direction either. And then we get to Rodrigo de Paul, right? We get to Rodrigo de Paul, whose statement is just far worse. And I want to preface this with the fact that I am a hater. I have never liked Rodrigo de Paul. He just annoys me. Everything about him annoys me. He is a World Cup champion. I'm a dude that sits in my room and talks to his computer. I realize that he has accomplished a lot in his life. I am not going to be capable of taking that away from him. And, you can take all of that with a grain of salt. I am a hater, and he's just somebody, the way that he plays, the way that he carries himself, it's just always annoyed me. We all have those types of people, right? So that might be coloring my opinion here, but let's see. He said it happens that one doesn't analyze pitch songs, right? So off the top, he's dropping in with the you're focusing too much on, it's just friendly banter and friendly singing in the stands and so on and so forth. I can understand people that have suffered racism and all of that don't like it. That is one of the most out of touch sentences I've ever heard in my entire fucking life. Okay. That is a batshit crazy sentence to drop. He's like, yeah, I understand that people that have suffered racism don't like it. In itself, that sentence acknowledges that the song is racist, right? Like, if you were saying, I can understand that people have suffered racism don't like it, you are saying that people that are suffering racism, you're acknowledging that people are suffering racism from the song. You just acknowledge the whole, in a way that McAllister, didn't. McAllister was just kind of like, it didn't have bad intention or whatever. This, you are acknowledging that you think the song is racist, and you're just like, but was it really that big of a deal? That's just that's what you're doing here. He said, but there are ways. If Enzo's club teammates felt offended, the way to do it is to call him and not put it on social media. So the next part of it, he's talking about how the teammates of Enzo responded by all kind of posting on social media. To which I would say, Enzo started it. Enzo wasn't chanting this with his teammates or his friends and got caught by a fan when he really, Enzo wasn't broadcasting this to the world, but it happened to be some fan sticking a phone through a window or something to record it, in which case, Enzo wasn't putting it out to the world. But if Rodrigo de Paul's issue is with Enzo's teammates posting on social media that they were upset about this or their feelings about this, fucking Enzo put it on social media first. He streamed it on Instagram Live. What the fuck do you mean? He was broadcasting this live to everyone. Like, he was the one that broadcast the song to everyone. He made the decision to make it a public thing. So, of course, their responses are going to be public because all of these players, particularly Enzo's black teammates, are going to get asked about this 4 billion times. It is so unbelievably naive to think that any one of Enzo's black teammates would not have to make a public statement about this sort of thing, right? Whether, even if they agreed, right, with Rodrigo de Paul's stance that, it's just a fan chant, no matter, they would have to say that publicly because Enzo broadcasted this to the world on Instagram Live. He put it on social media first. How can you say, well, you should have reached out privately. This is ridiculous. They did it publicly. I think there's a bit of malice or to put Enzo in a place that he absolutely shouldn't be in. Why would they have it out for Enzo Fernandez? I didn't have a problem with Enzo Fernandez before this. Sure, maybe Chelsea spent a little bit too much money to try and buy him, but what is the incentive for everybody to go out and just kind of lay out Enzo Fernandez in this situation? Do I think Enzo's entire career should be ruined from this? No. And have certain people probably gone a little too far in my estimation in trying to, throw too much onto Enzo Fernandez here? Yeah, probably. That's how the internet works. You're going to get the full spectrum of responses from, all the way over here, and that Enzo Fernandez is a hero and he should be the keynote speaker at the next KKK rally, to Enzo Fernandez should never kick a ball again. How dare he have done this in the first place, right? And the right answer is usually somewhere in between those two. In this instance, Enzo Fernandez ideally apologizes to his teammates, comes out and says, hey, that wasn't smart. I'm learning. I'm trying to improve as a human being. Won't really do that again. My bad. And then you can move on with your life. Right? Now, if you make this sort of, if you start acting out and make this sort of a repeat thing and it keeps getting worse and worse, then obviously you need to have a separate conversation. But off this one incident, I feel like that's a perfectly fair response. But Rodrigo de Paul here is saying, this coordinated public effort on social media to try and put Enzo Fernandez down. Dude, if I Instagram Live myself doing something stupid and doing something that a lot of people agree is racist, then you're probably going to get a public backlash for that. You're not just going to get a private phone call, right? Like all these people that are in the public eye, including Enzo Fernandez, having to deal with Enzo Fernandez publicly broadcasting this on social media. It's just absolutely insane. But I'll leave Rodrigo de Paul there because Rodrigo de Paul just I don't know, dude. And we'll go back to McAllister because on this ESPN article, they presented just a little bit more. And this is kind of the main reason that McAllister was brought up on the stream in the first place. So we saved the best for last. He said, the reality is that we are not a racist country. He said, we are not accustomed to talk about racism. It's an important topic. I think I think this is something that's really important to bring up. All right. I have the opportunity to travel all over the world for the videos we make in the main YouTube channel. I love making the Hidden Ground series, which we're working on more episodes for, and have been traveling basically my entire life to go different places. And to be perfectly honest, there are some countries more so than others that don't get exposed to different types of people, right? And you got to understand that the experience in different countries is vastly different depending on where you grow up in terms of your exposure and understanding to different parts of the world and different types of people and different looking people. I mean, it really is that simple, right? And he says we are not accustomed to talking about racism. That's probably the greatest bar that any one of these guys have dropped. And what he is saying is almost the quiet part out loud. He's like, look, in Argentina, we felt like this was okay, But the idea that we're not a racist country, I don't think there's any racist countries. I just think that there are racist people, right? And I hate generalizing in a particular country. I've had plenty of lovely interactions with people from Argentina who wouldn't have sung this song in the first place. So I don't mean to suggest that like everybody from Argentina would think singing this song is okay in the first place as well. Okay, it's very important to leave like whole countries out of it, because once you start generalizing whole countries, you're always grouping in a bunch of people that probably agree with what you're saying in the first place. But in a way, I actually really appreciated McAllister saying something like this, because it does kind of highlight that disparity in terms of like ethnic and racial understanding that happens between different countries. And when these guys become mega international footballers, then they get exposed to a much larger group of people with different backgrounds and different appearances that they have to grapple with in a way that they haven't had to grapple with before. But as long as you're learning and improving and trying to, impact other people in a better way, then you can come out and you can be fine. But these responses are all crazy. And there was one other, predictably, there was one other response to this that I just feel like I have to show you to kind of bookend this whole story. The bookend being that Enzo Fernandez went back to River Plate, and while he was there, because this is just the way the world kind of works now, the entire stadium decided to sing the song. They were singing the song. Now, I don't blame Enzo for this. A lot of people did. I don't necessarily know why, but this is also a sign that, as we talked about in the last video, either you're talking shit towards French people for saying that they're using non-French people, they have to use non-French people in order to have to win, or you're talking shit about the African ancestry of the players in the French national team. Either way, it's coming off real bad to me. And so this is just that's just not a good look. Not a good look. And what just a weird situation that his this is really just a sign that this is far from over, and Argentina national games are going to be under a microscope for a while. For people are going to be locked in on what's going on from now on.